You check your account on a Thursday. The number is lower than you expected. Not dramatically lower, just lower. So you do the mental math. Rent went out. Car payment cleared. Nothing unusual happened this month. And yet, the number is still wrong. You scroll through the transactions. The coffee. The delivery. The app charge you forgot about. Each one looks normal. Each one makes sense on its own. But the total doesn't add up to the life you feel like you're living. Here's the thing. 61% of adults say they have no idea what they spent last month. That's from the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. And the reason isn't recklessness. The problem is almost never one big leak. It's 7 small ones, running at the same time, invisibly, with your full permission. Today I'm walking through exactly what those 7 habits are, what each one actually costs when you do the real math, and why they survive for years without ever being noticed. There's a particular kind of financial frustration that doesn't get talked about enough. It's not the frustration of someone who's struggling. It's the frustration of someone who earns enough, who's doing everything approximately right and still can't seem to get ahead. Every month ends in roughly the same place as the month before. The savings don't accumulate the way the math says they should. The account never quite reaches the number you have in your head. This isn't a cash flow problem. It's a drainage problem. A slow, normalized series of small exits that individually feel like nothing. But taken together, they consume the margin that would otherwise compound into something real. And here's where the numbers get uncomfortable. Median household income in the U.S. sits around $74,000 a year before tax. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average household spends approximately $72,000 a year, nearly everything it earns. The gap between what comes in and what goes out is, for most households, almost nothing. And inside that almost nothing gap, that's where the difference between building wealth and staying level is decided. If you earn around that number and feel like there should be more left at the end of the month, you're right. The math says there should be. The habits say otherwise. The first habit is the one nobody thinks of as a habit, because it feels like a preference. Coffee on the way to work. A snack at the station. A drink grabbed between meetings. Each one is small enough to feel negligible. Most people estimate they spend maybe $5 to $8 a day on these kinds of purchases. The actual average, from a Visa spending analysis, is closer to $11 to $14 a day. At $12 a day, 5 days a week, for 48 working weeks a year, that's $2,880. Not from one decision, from hundreds of small ones that never felt like decisions at all. Now take that same amount and invest it annually at a historical return of 7%. Over 25 years, it becomes approximately $121,000. The habit doesn't feel expensive because no single instance is expensive. It feels like living. And that's exactly why it goes unexamined for years. The second habit is the one most people are convinced they've already handled. The streaming service you signed up for during lockdown, still billing every month. The fitness app you downloaded with good intentions and opened twice. The software trial that converted to a paid plan without a notification clear enough to catch. West Monroe Partners found that the average household underestimates its subscription spending by 2.5 times. People believe they spend around $80 a month on subscriptions. The actual average is closer to $200. That's a $120 gap every month. $1,440 a year. Not spent on anything you value. Spent on the absence of a cancellation. It's the financial cost of never taking 40 minutes once a year to go through every recurring charge and make a deliberate yes or no decision on each one. Now here are the next two habits. These are the ones most people push back on when they first hear them, which is usually a sign they're the most relevant. The third habit feels like saving money while you're spending it. Buying in bulk, buying on sale, buying larger quantities because the per unit price is lower, even when the total rises and part of what you bought spoils, expires, or never gets used. The USDA estimates that the average household wastes 30 to 40% of the food it purchases. A family spending $800 a month on groceries is throwing away somewhere between $240 and $320 worth of food every month. Not because they shop irresponsibly, because they shop optimistically, planning meals they don't make, buying quantities designed for a week they don't actually have. The savings on the per unit price is real, but the waste on the unused portion wipes it out, and then some. The habit survives because it feels virtuous in the moment of purchase. The cost only becomes visible at the end of the week when the vegetables get thrown out. The fourth habit is one that technology has made nearly invisible. Research published in the Journal of Marketing found that frictionless payment systems, stored card details, one-click checkout, digital wallets, increase unplanned purchasing by 30 to 40%. Compared to purchases that require manually entering a card, that friction was never just an inconvenience. It was a pause. A moment between the impulse and the transaction where a real decision could be made. Remove the friction. Remove the decision point. A simple fix. A 3-day rule. Wait 72 hours before completing any non-essential online purchase above a threshold you set yourself. Most of those purchases never happen. And here's the key thing. This doesn't require willpower. It requires a rule. Willpower is finite. A structural delay is not. The fifth habit has the most socially acceptable justification of all of them. Ordering the bottle of wine because everyone at the table is. Upgrading the hotel room because the original choice felt embarrassing next to where the others were staying. Buying the version of a product that the social context implies you should own, rather than the version that actually meets your needs. Robert Cialdini's research identifies social proof as one of the most powerful drivers of human behavior, including spending. People consistently make financial decisions based not on personal preference, but on what the people around them appear to expect. The cost here isn't just the individual moments. It's the slow, invisible upward calibration of your entire spending baseline to match an environment you may not actually be able to afford. You don't notice it happening. You just notice, eventually, that your lifestyle costs more without feeling better. The sixth habit sits at the intersection of small amounts and high frequency. The out-of-network ATM fee, the minimum balance charge that kicked in once and reset, the $12 monthly fee you assumed was a one-time setup cost. Individually, these are almost invisible. $2.50 here, $5 there. But a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau study found that the average American household pays over $300 a year in bank fees alone. And that's before we get to what this habit does inside your investments. Morningstar research found that the difference between a 1% annual expense ratio and a 0.05% expense ratio on a $100,000 portfolio over 30 years is approximately $150,000 in foregone returns. The charges are small. The compounding of those charges over time is not. The seventh habit is the one that happens right after something good occurs. A pay rise comes through. 3 months later, the rent goes up. A bonus lands. The holiday gets upgraded. A debt clears, and instead of redirecting that freed-up margin toward the next goal, it gets quietly absorbed into general expenditure. Research published in the Journal of Economic Perspectives identifies this as one of the most consistent patterns in household financial behavior. The raise that was supposed to accelerate savings instead raises the spending floor. Within 6 months, the margin is gone again. This habit isn't irresponsible. It's natural. It feels like reward. But the financial consequence is that income growth rarely translates into net worth growth at the same rate. The households that break this pattern do it structurally. By directing a set percentage of any income increase toward investment before the lifestyle has a chance to price it in. Here's what all 7 of these habits produce collectively, measured against the real numbers. The Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances puts median household net worth at approximately $192,000. Sounds okay. But 60 to 70% of that is locked in home equity. Illiquid, not compounding in any meaningful way. Strip out the house. And liquid, investable net worth for the typical household sits somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000. That is the result of a working lifetime. Now zoom out further. The Credit Suisse Global Wealth Report finds that to sit in the top 50% of all adults on Earth by wealth, you need a net worth of approximately $8,600. To enter the global top 10%, around $100,000. 55% of all adults on the planet have total net worth under $10,000. Everything owned, minus everything owed. Under $10,000. The feeling of financial inadequacy that most people carry is generated almost entirely by local comparison, by measuring your position against the people immediately around you, whose spending you can see and whose debt you cannot. Almost everyone watching this is operating from a position of genuine structural advantage. The question is whether these 7 habits are quietly dismantling it. 7 habits. None of them dramatic. None of them obvious on their own. All of them running at the same time, quietly, with the full permission of a brain that experiences each instance as completely reasonable. The convenience purchase that never felt expensive. The subscription that outlived its value. The food bought and wasted. The frictionless purchase that bypassed the pause. The social spending that slowly raised the baseline. The fees that compounded invisibly. The lifestyle upgrade that absorbed every income improvement before it could accumulate. These habits didn't develop because of weakness. They developed because the environment made them easy, and the cost of each individual instance was never large enough to trigger a conscious response. So here's the one thing worth doing this week. Open every account. Look at every recurring charge from the last 90 days. Not to cancel everything, just to make every charge a deliberate choice rather than a default. Because here's the question I want to leave you with. If you added up every dollar that left your account last month without you making a conscious decision to spend it, what would that number be? And what would you do differently if you knew it?